Okay, welcome everyone. Stock market technical analysis. If you're new to the channel, that's really what we cover here is looking at the charts, looking for trade ideas. I'm always pointing out trade ideas that I find, and then we follow up on those and try to manage those trades accordingly. So I want to get into the general markets. Today is the Fed day. So Fed is going to come out and release their minutes here in a little under 2 hours, and then they're going to do a press conference. So there's opportunity there for volatility. We'll kind of talk about that and what the potential outcomes of that might be. And then we're going to get into the charts. I want to start out here today, though, with Apple. So Apple just reported earnings yesterday, and you can see it's down 1%, so not a huge sell-off, but definitely down after earnings. And the quarter was a blowout quarter. They had tons of profit, and it's not so much. A lot of that usually gets priced into the stock chart. So Apple's such a large company that, if Apple moves to the upside, oftentimes that move is pricing in that blowout quarter. And so that's what I think what we've seen. Now we have some selling, not a lot, but the things I want to point out on Apple is if you look at the daily chart, we have this uptrend line that Apple has been trading in, and recently it broke above the former highs right there at 144.65. We had a breakout, kind of a breakout, a back test, continued to break out. We're still back testing, kind of chopping around. One thing that's technically changed a little bit as of today is this uptrend line. We're now starting to break to the downside of that uptrend line. Nothing impulsive, and this is a daily chart, so then the day's not closed, so they could easily end the day back above that support, and you wouldn't have that daily break of that trend line. But things to watch in case you do get that confirmation or that daily close below that trend line. It shows a little clearer on the hourly chart. You can see we have all of these tags of this trend line, kind of a short-term trend line where we were holding support. And then recently we gapped down this morning. They ramped it up and then rejected it, and it's selling down off of that trend line so far. So we'll wait to see what the Fed does and how this wants to react. One level, I think a key level to watch is right there at about 144.44. That is a level that I think that's the former high, basically. So if that goes, then, and you see an impulsive breakdown of that level, then really ultimately this price action right up here was a false breakout. So that's bearish. False breakouts are bearish. And especially with the negative divergences that we have in the PPO and the RSI, telling us that we have lower momentum on this new breakout. This new breakout to new highs right up in here was on lower momentum on the RSI and the PPO. So it indicates to us that there's a high probability that this breakout will be a false breakout. Now we just got to wait for the candles and the price to confirm. So looking for a breakdown, I would look for that 144.40 area. An impulsive break below that level, and that should set this thing to the downside. If we don't get that break and they recover the support line, then maybe we just continue higher. That's completely possible. So things to watch, could go either way, and those are kind of the levels I'm looking at. Okay, Google reported yesterday as well. Up slightly, nothing crazy, but we're just still within this breakout range where we've been. So here's your upward price channel in Google, coming off the March 2020 lows. Broke out to the upside. You can see we broke out and with a negative divergence, clear negative divergence. So it's a high probability that this breakout is going to prove to be a false breakout. And if we see that false breakout, I would look for a break back below this trend line. And then ultimately, I think that would set us up for a move down to the bottom of the trend line or the channel, the bottom of the channel. So that would be the potential move. But right now we're still holding above there. And no technical change really today giving us any indication that we have a breakdown or a sell signal or anything on Google. Microsoft, basically flat today. I think these fangs are waiting for the Amazon to come out here tomorrow after the close. So they might just, and also the Fed, waiting to clear some of these events before making a decision on where to go. So Microsoft, again, I think Microsoft already broke this short-term daily trend line. Here's your uptrend line on the daily chart. We had a sell signal right here on Microsoft, but then it ran up and back tested, and we're back below the trend line though. You can see here on the hourly, there's a clear level of support, all the reactions of support there. We broke, back tested, and we're still below that support line. So I think Microsoft is likely going to continue lower. But again, these news events and Amazon earnings after the bell. Looking at Amazon, so Amazon's still within trend. We still have a bullish breakout as of right now. So I have it circled right here. This is a breakout above the former highs, which were right here back in September. 354, it's about 3,550. You can see we had the breakout, back test, and we're still holding. So we do have a breakout, but this breakout is coming with big negative divergence right there. So lower momentum on the indicators than the former high. There's your former high with higher momentum back in here. And then you have a new high in price, but lower momentum. So negative divergence is there, indicating that we have a higher probability that this breakout is going to prove to be a failure. What I would wait for on Amazon is a break back below that former high, 3,554, we'll call it. You want to see an impulsive break back below that level. That's your sell signal. If we don't get that, then Amazon likely will just hold this level and probably continue higher. So those are things to watch. Now, Amazon reports earnings after the close tomorrow. So we'll see if that is market moving and if that starts to break some of these levels or where that's going to take this. As of right now, it's just flat, but just kind of watching where this goes. Facebook, I don't cover this one too often, but Facebook has earnings today after the close. So I want to talk about that. I don't see anything on the daily chart that here's your March 2020 lows, and I tried to draw a trend line. I can't really make a clean trend line there where I have more than 2 data points. You can kind of mark out something like right here, but it's just not a super clean trend line that I can really mark out. Even this one doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. One thing though to note on the weekly chart though on Facebook, if I roll back on the weekly, you can see here going back to really 2014. This is when Facebook really started to create its bullish trend, 2014. You can see this is a weekly chart. All the tags of support, right? There's another one, there's another one, there's a cluster right there. And we broke support back in 2018, and we've been back testing from underneath ever since. So each tag of there's only been one tag, I guess, of the actual trend line, but it was completely rejected. There's a tag on the weekly, rejected. And this sell-off, that's a 17% drop. And you can see where we're trading at right now coming into earnings on the weekly chart. We're right there at resistance, major resistance on the weekly chart. We have earnings coming out. So it can go either way, of course, but, it is set up for to get rejected at this resistance line. Looking back at the daily, negative divergences remain. So you can see here we have a new high in price up here on much lower momentum, all right, than the former high. So you can see here this was a former high back here, and the momentum was stronger back during that former high. So we have fading momentum, higher prices, and we're right into major resistance on the weekly chart with earnings coming out. The markets and stocks love to get completely set up, like that. So look for a big move. If I had to guess, I'd say earnings will be received negatively, and the Facebook will sell off after earnings. So, that's what the chart tells me right now. Okay, let's look at Starbucks. I've been talking about this one for a while, and I pointed it out in the video yesterday. Starbucks reported earnings yesterday, and the earnings came out. They were received negatively. Basically, it's not so much about what they even say. It's just what the market wants to do with the price, with the stock. And so right now, zooming in, the bigger picture on Starbucks, you have this uptrend line here on Starbucks. We started to put in negative divergence. So if I can zoom in, you can see I have it circled. That's a divergent high where, see the momentum, how it's just trending down. You can draw a downtrend line on the momentum. Each new high that we make in price, the momentum's just slightly lower than the former high's momentum. You can see it right here, right? This momentum was here, and then we made a new high in price, but the momentum was less and then started to turn down. So that's negative divergence. I teach all this in my course, so anybody who's new, if you haven't checked out my technical analysis and trading course, link is in the description below. It's not free. I charge $99, but it's about 4 or 5 hours of video training going through all these concepts in detail. Really should help build your education and give you the skill set to find these trades and evaluate them on your own. So check that out, link in the description below. Going back here to Starbucks, basically you have a sell signal or a break of trend right there on that one, and then you backtested once. And then recently they backtested it again, gapped it above that trend line, made it look pretty bullish, in the short term, held up there for a few days. But again, I pointed it out that they gapped it above that trend line right before earnings. That to me looked like a big kind of a big no-no basically is, to see big moves of recoveries or breakouts or breakdowns happening on major levels right before earnings is usually very suspicious. So that's what it looked like to me as a stop raid, and I was expecting this to sell off after earnings. We did get the earnings, we got a gap down. So what we have right now is an island cluster top. All right, that means basically you gap up, create a trade up there for a few days, create a cluster of candlesticks, and then you gap down and create the islands. How it's floating, you gap up, gap down, and you've got this floating group of candlesticks. Island cluster top. That's what that is, and that's signaling that's a reversal pattern, and that's a topping pattern. So as long as we don't close that gap, run up and close that gap, then I would expect Starbucks to continue to sell off. All right, and I'd be looking for moves down to 109.40, likely going to break that and probably head down to 101.20. And yeah, we'll just cover those levels for right now, but I am expecting more downside. And again, I talked about shorting Starbucks. I took a short on this before earnings. I talked about how I felt pretty comfortable doing that, and so far it's profitable by we're down 2.5%, nothing crazy. Let's see what the Fed does. See if the Fed wants to move the market. Okay, I want to point out this one, Net, which is Cloudflare. So on this one we have an uptrend line coming off the March 2020 lows right there. We broke trend, the original trend, back here in March of 2021, and we've been backtesting ever since. So that's the thing with backtest. You can continue to backtest for a while, and that's why it's only objective to add or start a short on the backtest. So you had an objective short, right? Here's the backtest right here. You would have made money if you shorted. Backtest right here. If you shorted right up here, you would have made money. And again, you can see even right here, you would have basically kind of treaded water, nothing crazy. But that was another backtest, and you can see they're ramping it up for another backtest. We have earnings coming out August 5th. So let's see how this plays out. But I would suspect, it looks as if it's going to run up and actually do another backtest. This is a divergent high. So you can see here the negative divergence, see the lower momentum here on much higher prices. So this is all divergence, negative divergence. So I would look, with negative divergence intact, I would look for backtests as opportunities to add or establish a short position. And obviously we have earnings coming out. So, it's conservative to wait until after earnings if you want to kind of clear that earnings event. I wouldn't be, I'm not interested in shorting it right here, but if it was going to run up a little bit higher and get up to that trend line, I might take a starter short even before earnings, as the chart would be set up in a bearish posture. Okay, let's talk about the Fed. Fed's coming out here in about an hour and a half. So I think the way the market's set up is there's going to be no rate hikes. That's what is anticipated, no rate hikes. And the Fed is likely going to talk about transitory inflation. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to talk. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Had a phone call. Someone was asking me about the Fed today. So the point that I'm trying to make is likely the Fed's not going to do anything, and they're likely going to just talk about transitory inflation. Gold right now is set up. We're holding at 1790 support. We have bullish divergences on the daily chart. You can see that basically how we basically made a divergent low as I zoom in. This was a divergent low down here. and we are continuing to, move higher, trending higher, holding that 1790 support. So gold's set up bullish, at least in the short term. I would expect that to continue, so we'll watch for hints of any kind of change on that. And then the dollar, let's flip over to the dollar here. You can see the dollar is starting to break down out of this bearish rising wedge. So on the hourly chart, you can see we were holding this trend line here on the dollar. We broke to the downside, and we've really been making kind of waves lower. So I'd expect the dollar to go lower. And that's really the setup. Now, ways to play this if there's a surprise, which I think is a very low probability event. But if there is a surprise, if the Fed hikes, if they say they want to hike interest rates 0.25%, or if they talk about, if they lay out a plan for reducing their bond or mortgage-backed security purchases, ways to play it. So if there's an interest rate hike, then likely the market's going to sell off. Yeah, that's a very, very high probability the market will basically tank. But gold could also go down as well. So things to watch in that situation. In the event of a hike, you're going to have probably a broad-based sell-off. If there is a plan laid out about mortgage-backed securities being reduced, which I think is what I've been hearing, is that they're going to start potentially reducing the mortgage-backed security purchases. So if they start laying out a plan and really give timelines on on the reduction of the mortgage-backed securities, a plan to reduce it and talking about reducing it, but giving a plan on when they're going to do it is pretty much the same thing as just doing the reduction to the market. The market's forward-looking, so it will treat that as if the cut or the reduction in mortgage-backed securities is happening today. If that happens, maybe you want to look at the home buying sector or the home builder sector. XHB would be an example. The mortgage rates should go up if the Fed is not buying those mortgage-backed securities, which rising interest rates, mortgage rates, is bad for the home builders. And so you might want to look at that as a potential sell-off. Right now on this XHB, we probably can move this down a little bit, connect these ones right there. This is what I would say is our daily trend line on XHB. We're still above support. Right now, support's sitting at about 70.40. We did have negative divergence right up here. So this was a divergent high right in here. See the momentum, how it's lower than the previous. So we had negative divergence and we are downtrending, but we have this major support right here. So until you break that support, there really is no sell signal. I'd want to see a break of this trendline support to give me the indication that we're going to get, more selling. If that happens, we do have a support line right here at about 65.50, 65.60, 70, somewhere right in there. There's some support there, so I would expect we'll break and then hit that. Now that's a ways down there from where we're at. That is a drop of 10%. So that's likely not going to play out in one day, but things to watch if we get that sell signal or break a trend. So a lot of this is just kind of setups for how the Fed's going to report. I anticipate that they're really going to do nothing. They're not going to raise interest rates, and they are going to just talk about transitory inflation and then just kick the can to the next meeting. And then that's likely how they're going to continue to play this, is just keep kicking it down the road until something breaks. Okay, so that's all I got, guys. Leave me a thumbs up on your way out if you guys find value. Good luck. And if anything gets crazy, I'll put out an end of the day video. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next one tomorrow. Bye.